We happened upon the Intel booth here at GDC and found quite an interesting gentleman who turns out to be a professor at a local community college, I understand just across the bay, I believe, right? The Contra Costa College, Community College, and doing some interesting work here with the Intel folks. Professor Tom Murphy, welcome into Tomorrow. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
And I have to ask early on, for those that are watching the video at intotomorrow.com, why the green hair and beard? St. Patty's Day was earlier.
It was. I almost had blue hair and purple beard, but I didn't have those spray cans. So we have a tradition when we do the hackathons or the makeathons that in the middle of the night, there's a spraying of hair. So it just seemed appropriate for me to put that on if we were doing the makeathon that we're doing here.
See. Now, what is a makeathon? We can assume what a hackathon might be, but tell me about the makeathon.
Hackathon has been mainly doing software stuff, and we've had 2 of these makeathons so far where we use the Galileo board plus a bunch of sensors and some programming to do stuff. Now, the first one we did, we were focusing on finding disaster relief in the first 72 hours. We were working with UNICEF. And now we've gone, in a sense, 180 degrees opposite, and we're playing games. So their job was, in a 2-day period, to figure out how to make a wearable game using the Galileo processor.
So the Intel Galileo processor played the important role of being able to handle the workload, and then the students, your students, had to come up with, how do we do this?
Yes, there's a lot of different sensors. So one of the students used the Bluetooth strength as a way of doing a Pac-Man-like game. So if the ghost was too close to Pac-Man, Pac-Man had some LEDs that would register a loss of health. Another team made a glove that could tell whether you had rock, paper, scissors, Spock, or lizard. And then you could compete against each other where the computer was being the arbiter of who did it correctly.
So the Galileo took care of all the processing power, and now it became the students' challenge to make this all happen.
Yep, it was the processing power and also the work with all of the sensors that was bringing the data in. But I think the main thing the students did was creativity. You know, a lot of students in classes, my classes, are going for a grade. When we're doing these hackathons or makeathons, there's no grade. They're doing it sheerly with passion, and they're getting something done in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, that's one of the keys too, right? Is hurry up. You've got 2 days, maybe at the most, to accomplish something like this. They've really got to put their thinking caps on and let technology do the work.
Right, and in 2 days is not that much time. In the mode of doing regular school, they might have a similar project that would take them weeks or months to do. So here, again, it's making sure that it doesn't suck, right? That's the criteria. Not that it's perfect, but just that they're happy enough with it.
Yeah, because at that point, especially from a student's perspective, I guess, they can fine-tune some things, but they made it work and they made it happen, and now get into some real creativity, and you talk about making stuff.
Right, it is. It's very, very powerful. And then in working with Intel, I know we're going to keep changing what the design constraints are, but what's always going to be constant is students being very, very creative, again, over a long period of time with lots of coffee, keeping them up, right? Working on solving problems.
Because those 2 days are likely to be straight through, right?
Well, in the past they have been straight through. For this last one, because the space we were in, we needed to be out at midnight. We were out from midnight, well, they went home from midnight to 10 the next day. And
hopefully the brain kept working, just they couldn't work on the project at that point?
I hope they were sleeping. They must have, because they came back refreshed and renewed.
One of the other things we're seeing at your display here in the Intel exhibit is something to do with Play-Doh. Now tell me about the Play-Doh and how that plays a role on yet another device.
Sure, the device is a makey device.
I beg your pardon?
Makey, right? I guess it's because if you start playing with it, you makey something, and you do it so well, you must makey. I don't know. But the key thing is, using it, you can use almost anything to just close a connection, right? And like over here, you were playing with a video game where you were speeding up with one hunk of Play-Doh, another hunk of Play-Doh, you were jumping, and then a third, you were moving to the left, and a fourth, you were moving to the right.
And I would not have thought that, first of all, it's all about conductivity, right? I would not have thought that Play-Doh was conductive.
Go figure. Lots of things are conductive. So one of the things we were going to work with the next time we do a hackathon is, it turns out there's conductive inks and non-conductive inks. So we could print a t-shirt that's actually a circuit. And that
So now you're going to makey a t-shirt, and wearable technology is playing that role.
Absolutely. Well, and again, it's more creativity on the student's part, right? And this thing allows you to register that you've closed the connection. And that's the cool thing. And there's lots of different ways of closing a connection. So I can imagine playing a Twister game where you actually, it does matter where you're touching, good touches.
Of course, yeah. Well, because the professor's going to make sure the students are only touching good. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, a number of our makeathons are coding for good makeathons, where we are trying to make a difference in society, which is kind of a good thing.
Oh, for sure, because while it may be gaming in certain instances, certainly here at the Game Developers Conference, it really is about what you can then do, especially with wearable technology that's becoming a part of a lot of our lives.
Yeah. Anybody who's used a Fitbit has wearable technology. One of our friends who were at the Makeathon was drum pants. So you can actually be tapping parts of your body and playing a drum kit. It's kind of cool.
What else has you pumped about what your students are doing and how you're really getting them motivated about tech in general?
Well, what gets me pumped is how they're getting themselves motivated. So we have 4 different computer clubs at my college. We have a graphics and gaming guild, a parallel programming club, computational math, and a sisterhood of the traveling laptop, supporting women in computing, right? And they're all student driven. And their passion is what has enabled them to learn stuff beyond what I can teach them in the classroom. Because I'm the only professor for all of the computer science classes. And they're learning tons of soft skills by their own initiative in the clubs in the afternoons.
Well, but you're obviously motivating them to then get excited about tech, and then now cutting them loose to say, show me what you got. And and yes, your grade depends on it.
No, there's no grade.
At that point, there's not. Oh, okay. But come on, get a little extra credit for doing something cool?
Credit.
Oh, professor, come on, I'm going to twist your arm for them.
That would be terrible. Because if you had a grade on it, then you wouldn't be doing it for fun. There's a certain flexibility in just doing it for the sheer joy of doing it.
Good point. And what other cool things are your students working on that you just can't wait to see how they turn out into tomorrow?
One of them submitted a couple of them submitted a proposal to UNICEF for their 72-hour contest. So they're looking to find a way that they can use technology to help in an environment where all the roads are down. There's no food, no water, no medicine, no cell. And so a group of students came up with a device they're working on that will connect to anybody's cell phone so you can send text message, and then you can chain these together, and it's going to be using, I'm drawing a blank on it, a ham radio, because ham radio goes long distances. And so you can have a sequence of these that'll ultimately get out to high-speed internet, because letting people know who's alive, well, around is really important information.
Absolutely, and while that might be older tech, it's still tech, and it's still playing a role.
Well, I think that's the most clever thing that my students can do, is do really good problem solving. There's the constraints you got, and then given the constraints you got, what are you going to do with it? In this case, it was Play-Doh. In another case, it's ham radio.
True. Now, for example, did you give them Play-Doh and say, now go do something with it? Or did you just say from the get-go, I want you to be creative and come up with something?
Well, for one student, I did give her Play-Doh because I knew she could do art. And I was thinking of having an art sculpture that, depending on where and how you touched it, it would make music and video. But she ended up working on a LARPing project. Now, I bet your viewers don't know what LARPing is.
I don't know what LARPing is.
And again, it sounds dangerous, but it's not. It's live action role play. So they were instrumenting pads on the shoulders and on swords that they made to basically beat on each other. And then there was a sensor that told whether they were hit or not.
Gently, of course, but making music.
Yeah, well, no music,
okay.
Just thuds.
Unbelievable. Well, we wish you well and your students well. You're obviously doing some fun things and truly motivating them. And then, of course, now they're motivating themselves. So.
And I think this has applicability to any level of college, even high school, middle school across the U.S. I think you're going to see more and more of this as ways to foster creativity. I do.
Love it. Professor Tom Murphy with Contra Costa College and of Contra, CONTRACOSTA.edu for more info, and we'll link you there too when you visit us at intotomorrow.com. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Keep up the good work, and I'm glad you're an Intel partner because they're pumped about what you and your students are working on.
Intel's a great partner. They have great vision. Thanks a lot.
We're back with more as Into Tomorrow continues. I'm Dave Graveline on the Advanced Media Network.